Welcome to Tank Time with Tom. And if you missed it last week, you could probably guess, but I'm Tom, and I'm going to show you some stuff going on with our tank and how the steelhead eggs are doing. So before I get really into showing you what's going on in the tank, I want to give a shout out to our friend Carl from the Russian River Fly Fishers. They're one of the sponsors of this program, and Carl gave me a hatch sheet calculator, which is way cool. What this calculator does is it allows you to calculate the amount of days that it's going to take for the eggs to actually hatch into alevin. And I've got the sheet right here, and it's got a lot of numbers on it. It's got some cool like math, and a lot of science goes into this. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and show you this in a second, and then we're going to get into the eggs, and I'll show you the tank, and we'll get into that. So here we are looking at it from the top, and as I mentioned, here's the egg calculator, the hatch calculator that Carl gave us. And the other thing that's really important is the permit, and this has to be on your tank or right next to the tank while you're doing it. It has all the critical information for California Department of Fish and Wildlife. But the thing that we're going to pull off of here is there's the delivery date. That's the date that we got the eggs and put them into my tank. They're steelhead. They were harvested at the hatchery on March 26th. So this is kind of like the day they were born. So that's another important number. And there's the average temperature of the tank. And we're going to use that all in the hatch sheet calculator to figure out how long it's going to take for those eggs to hatch. It talks about the temperature of the hatchery right up here, and then they say minus 32 degrees equals 21. Okay, so we're going to take that number and multiply that by the amount of days that it was at the hatchery, 19 days. Okay, and there we were from the time it was delivered from the hatchery to the harvest date. Okay. Then it gives you a number here, okay? So you take that, 21 times 19 equals 399, and that gives you the amount of TUs. TUs stand for what's called a thermal unit, okay? And a thermal unit's kind of like, you know, putting blankets on or turning the heat up. Okay, the more thermal units, the warmer it's gonna be, okay? So this is a really important number in science, okay? So we take that, we take the number of thermal units that are needed to hatch. Now, the steelhead eggs need 550 thermal units. So it's kind of like if you've ever baked something, you put the muffins in the oven or the chocolate chip cookies, they've got to be in at 350 for 45 minutes. That's kind of what this number means, okay? And then we take that number minus the number of thermal units that we received and the amount of thermal units at arrival. So there's that 399 again that was up here. And then the difference is 151. So that's how many thermal units are needed for these eggs to hatch at my house. So we go from there and we have a few more calculations. The average temperature of the aquarium, well, it kind of goes between 51 to 55 degrees. Okay, so I did two ranges. Minus 32, there's that number again that we had up top. Okay, and then it gives you the amount of thermal units the eggs receive each day. Okay, so it's either 19 or 23 depending on how warm it is. So that is a key number. We take the units that are left until hatching, which we got up here, and divided by the thermal units the eggs receive each day, which is that 19. Okay, and that's how many days are left until the eggs hatch. Okay, so it's going to be between 6.5 and 8 days from the day we receive the eggs. So you know what all this math and sciencey stuff means? That was a couple days ago. So guess what? We have alevin. And they're really pronounced alevin. Check that out. They're little baby steelhead with the egg sac still attached. And they're swimming around. Isn't that cool? It's exactly what Carl's hatch calculator estimated. Thanks for sharing that with us, Carl. It's a great way to use math and science, isn't it? So I've been watching these eggs every day. You can imagine having eggs in your house with steelhead. It's pretty cool. So I've been really careful. There's a few really critical things. Remember we talked about the temperature, which is back there in that back corner. It says 56.3, and I mentioned before, it's a few degrees warm, so it's really about 53 degrees. But it's so important to have cold, clean water with lots of oxygen. And you may have heard the term silt is a dirty word. Well, that's really important here. Notice how clean the gravel is. Now, if the gravel had a lot of silt in it, it would reduce the amount of oxygen in the tank, and these fish wouldn't be able to survive. In fact, they might not even hatch. In fact, there might not even be eggs if there's that much silt. And silt happens when there's a lot of runoff from so many things. It could be from fire, natural disasters, as we've seen. It could be from somebody making a road and not paying attention to how well it drains, and then all that silt goes into the water. But these are really, really happy alevin because there's no silt. It's a nice clean gravel bed. Some of them are actually trying to hide under the rocks. You can see them back there. A lot of them are trying to hide in this corner here. Here's the time lapse. Look how close they are to the gravel. They're all trying to hide, and they're moving way faster than they normally would just because of the film. Pretty amazing, isn't it? So, how many eggs did we receive? And how many will actually hatch? That's a good question. If you go to our website, there's a photo showing the eggs before we put them in the tank. And if you can count those and tell your teacher, maybe she can test you on it. Maybe she give you maybe there's a prize or a contest. But why don't you go ahead and count them, and we'll see how many there are. Let us know, okay? And also, the other question, which is a good one, is how many are going to hatch? We don't know at this point because in the wild, some are going to die and some may die here, even though we think we have perfect conditions. We don't have predators. We don't have birds to come in and eat the fry. We don't have other fish. We don't have pollution. So hard thing to answer right now. But what we'll do at the very end when we do the release is I'll put them all in a bucket and we can count them. I'll take a picture from the top, and kind of like the eggs, we'll be able to see a still image of all these fry in the bucket, and we'll be able to count them. So I think that wraps it up for today. Thank you all so much for watching. It's absolutely a blast having you here, and I'm going to hang it back to Ethan. So Ethan, thanks, and show them what you've got. I'm sure you have some surprises in store. Bye-bye. I'll see you next week.
That is super